massive scale to put a paywall. It's too much of a business risk for us. Um, Block content, like what Ben mentioned, seems to be a good approach, is a good approach for some of the publishers in the West, and we've seen that. Again, not sure if a lot of the publishers in India can really pull that off, at least at this point in time, especially with Google News and Facebook Instant article, on everybody's head right now. Content marketing, I think even in the previous session somebody mentioned it, it's worked out. It's still a big, so native is a big push. So out of 15 billion ad impressions, we do 6 billion ad impressions on native. We built a whole ad stack called Columbia, which just does native. And it's been a stellar success for us. It has been stellar success in terms of ROI for advertisers. It's been a success from user engagement standpoint. So it's worked out very well. And it is sort of something that we take very seriously. In fact, native is going to be a key strategy going forward at least. And we think the 6 billion ad impressions may go up to like a 20 billion ad impressions over the next year or two. One other way that publishers seem to be working is working with the whitelisted ad networks. Google, some of the big guys who've paid a lot of money, Outbrain. It has worked out until the other guys come in and they start blocking. So it's a good short-term tactical move. Will it hold up long-term? Is suspect. The other scenario is working with anti-ad blocking technologies, which is also a cat and mouse. I mean, they figure out, okay, the open source list is banning this URL, so I'll serve ad from this URL and all that, and it works. And there's a lot of investment in time and money people are making behind it. And it seems to be working for some guys. They can make a 10-15%, they can limit ad blocking by 10-15%. But again, it's not something that can sustain in my opinion. And it is just one of those short-term strategies that we can deploy. So what are the long-term strategies? And I think, at least in Times Internet and Columbia, the whole ad stack that we're building, it's been a very existential question that we keep asking ourselves. Our CEOs keep asking, what's our plan? What are we doing about this thing? So one of the things that I think is going to happen over the next few years, and we are actively working on it, but there are a lot of other guys as well, is merging the content management and ad tech into one. Now, because we have built the ad tech stack in-house and it's all domestically built, it's a big team in Noida that sits and build it out, and the CMS team also sits right there. It's sort of easy for us. But it's also something a lot of the large publishers, and when I say large publishers, I don't necessarily mean news publishers. I mean large publishers who are themselves very tech-oriented, and which could be beyond news as well. They are sort of leveraging a lot of funds, bringing it together to merge this ad stack and the CMS stack. So in some sense, if the ad is served such that the browser cannot distinguish between ad and content because it's coming from the same thing, it looks the same, it'll be much harder for ad blockers to block it out. Of course, with great powers comes great responsibility. It's one of the guys that said in the movie. It's basically you have to now be careful you don't, really screw yourself by bombarding it with advertisements on the user face when you do that. So that is still something that we're working on. The other aspect is publisher cohorts. Insourcing of ad tech. A lot of large publishers coming together. And in Times of India is like we are the world's largest English newspaper. It's ironic to say the least if you are an Indian, but that's the fact, right? I mean, we used to think, well, we are big, we don't care. That was probably a mindset a generation ago. Now, what is the reality? The reality is that all of us publishers are really the small fish compared to a Facebook, compared to Google. If you look at the digital ad spend, if you look at and Anita can elaborate a little bit more later in this session, the amount of money that is now going to the big tech publishers, and I'm still calling Google and Facebook as a publisher, right? Far, far outweighs what all of us put together do. So even though we love our little politics and we are happy about it and satisfies everybody's egos, for an outsider or a tech person like me to come into an organization like Times, and I'm like, why do you think we are big? We are not big. We are really small. Look at the page views of Facebook versus the Times Internet. We think 15 billion is big. They do that in a day. I mean, it is just crazy, the scale at which it's already hitting us. Because the history is that we are all print guys who happen to do digital. And print, thankfully, Facebook isn't there. We can only thank God for that. So it is not hitting us so much. But the fact is we are too small in this larger scheme of things. So a lot of publishers in Europe, in Israel, in US are coming together saying, can we insource this ad tech? Can we insource this CMS tech? Can we work together and maybe do a better job at latency for the user? Can we do a better job at providing lower bandwidth for the mobile user? Can we figure out a way to work with ad blockers, or at least be careful about how we language ourselves in front of our users and work together? And still be large enough so that a agency person can look at you and take you seriously. Because I don't know if Anita takes us seriously now, but she can answer that later. I know she's polite, so she'll be nice. But I think I'm sure 2 years later, the demand side guys are not going to be taking any of the publishers seriously because we're too small. And all our inventory is available via an Outbrain, is available via Facebook, is available via Google. So why am I even talking to you? So if I'm a demand person, I'm starting to think these guys are inconsequential. So it's an existential threat for the digital part of the publishing world to come in together and say, okay, we want to be relevant in this ad industry going forward. Now, a lot of countries in the world, it's not practical. I think US and a lot of other countries, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, I mean, you guys know a lot more about this. It's tough because it's already a lost cause. I think in India still, there is enough of the user attention on the large brands, the Times of India, the NDTVs, the Hindustan Times. At least the user connect is still strong, and it is still much bigger than a Facebook or a Google, even though the page views are far bigger already there. The moment Facebook Instant Articles and Apple News and Google News and all these things come and the same content is available there, users will just walk away. So it's also a great opportunity at this point in time for us to come together. And there are, we, in fact, one of the gold sponsor guys is Locovida, who's the company who licenses Columbia and and we work with a lot of Indian publishers already on that. And I'll be happy to, sit with them and you guys to see what we can do together. But there is at least something out there for us to explore. The other thing is reduce the ad frequency and the impact advertising bit. This part is our responsibility to the end user. And Facebook is doing a great job. If you look at Facebook Instant Article, it is fast loading. It is less annoying. It is a much better user experience. And we can blame Facebook and Google for anything in the world, but guess what? It's an open democracy, the internet is, right? So essentially people are going where they're getting better service. So it's our responsibility to also get better service to our end users. Removing offending ad networks. So this is the other part. I think with ad blocking and all the third-party scripts getting blocked, any ad network that is creating havoc on our consumers, especially internationally. I don't know how many of you guys actually look at how Indian publishers are being viewed in the international side of things? Anybody who tracks it actually puts like some software to see how the US consumer is looking at Hindustan Times or NDTV or any other publishers? Anyone? Boy, okay. We should, because it is not a pretty sight. Every time I get screenshots about Times of India or Ghana or Economic Times or any of our 30-odd properties from the international side, when the sales guys or some of the clients, and it's horrible. 50, 60 tags getting fired. There are autoplay videos running all over the place, creating havoc on the screen. There are 35 ads, because ad networks, once you give them JavaScript, they run, crazy with that site. It's just very, very annoying. And I've stayed in US for like almost 10 years, and I couldn't open Times of India a lot of times. It was that bad. The first thing we did was actually reduce the number of ad networks that are there internationally. And there's still a long way to go. But essentially, the amount of nuisance value some of the ad networks are creating on our sites is okay from a revenue perspective, because you're still getting paid for it. But now with the Facebook Instant Articles and the ad blockers and the Google News, users are going to quickly walk away. And that's our responsibility to fix. Paywalls, I think, can still be a long-term solution to niche publishers who offer very, very differentiated content. So it depends. I'm not sure how many of us can really seriously put a paywall and get away with it. Maybe some of our publications. Out of the 30, 40 odd properties we have, maybe 1 or 2 I think can win that game with a paywall. So just want to cover the ad tech trends that are that are happening because of all these new developments. Ad blocker is clearly one of them. So ad blocker is pushing a certain trend in the ad tech world for all publishers. So is instant articles, so is Apple News, and so is cross device. So essentially with the proliferation of mobile, you don't know your user across a mobile web, across an app, across a desktop, because we are all anonymous browsers. For us, they are 3 different guys. Facebook, on the other hand, knows he's the same guy. Google most likely does know he's the same guy. So the amount of ROI it is generating for the advertisers is much better. So some of the things that are happening thanks to ad blockers and all these other things is insourcing, right? So all the publishers, at least the large guys, is insourcing ad tech. And it started with obviously Facebook and Google, they insourced their ad tech completely and then they launched. The other is RTBs and the ad networks are facing a serious existential threat because of the same reason, right? Because they don't know the user, they cannot generate as much ROI as a Google or a Facebook, yet they annoy users a lot. So to make up the money, they start doing, continuous auto roll videos and things like that, or crazy JavaScript that is annoying the user. So just to make that extra money, they're pushing the user away further. So I think that trend is definitely happening. As you can see, a lot of the publicly listed ad networks are suffering heavily. Some of them are, and I sold my first company to Exponential, which was one of the largest ad networks then. It is still a large ad network, but very hard for any of these ad networks per se. The other is proliferation of the walled gardens and the publisher cohorts that are sort of trying to solve this problem for the end user will flourish. The other thing is all the pixel-based middlemen, DMPs, DSPs, are facing pressure. I don't know how many of you guys use an SSP, but essentially the best performing SSP now will start to become Google, and the best performing DSP will become, Google and Facebook. So all the SSP, DSP, DMP, all that crazy 3-letter words that we somehow learned in the past 3 years, we don't need it now because Facebook gives you an option, just take everything from them and be happy. And so is Google, and everybody else is going to basically have a tough time. What does that mean? So the first party data that so some of the guys mentioned the previous thing that they use Lotame and they understand the behaviors, and we have built some 60,000 rules and a tag tree which is 33,000 wide. So if you eat half an apple, I think we tag you like that and all that. So it's crazy amount of data that we're collecting. That is key. That's your future to success. So harness your first party data. Firstly, create first party data, then harness it, deploy it to your sales teams. And native and other things are, obviously more important as well. So in all this gloom, where is the silver lining, right? So should we just switch and join organic farming or something? Maybe not. So there is some silver lining to all of this. So one is the end user wants something. The ad blockers and the Facebook instant articles and the cross device is going to push all the publishers into doing certain things. People who don't do that will probably have a very tough time, to the extent that some publishers, I think, don't need a website anymore in 3 years. They will just upload the content to Facebook and collect the check. And I think it's a good business. If you're a P&L guy, there's no cost. All the top line is just the profit. Obviously ad tech, and we will have some trouble with our employments, but it's a good business to run. But people who actually come around and build this properly and get to the latency issues, get to the data issue, engage with the users correctly, build enough scale so that you're still relevant to the demand, will avoid multiple revenue shares. There was a very interesting pictorial that I didn't have it on me from AppNexus that said $1 spent by the advertiser, the publisher reaches, the amount of money publisher gets finally is 20 cents. So there are 7 layers of middlemen, from a DSP to a three types of ad servers to a DMP. They take all the money in the middle. You retain a lot bigger revenue that way. You avoid all the data leakages. So I don't know how many people are aware, but if you put a pixel of a network on your publishing house site, you can listen to that guy and you can catch the guy on santabanta.com. So why should I pay a Hindustan Times $3 CPM when I can listen on the RTB for that bid and go and bid the same guy on santabanta.com at 1 cent CPM. It's just stupid for someone to pay $5 or $3 to a premium site like us. So you avoid data leakages by removing and insourcing some of this ad tech. Faster response, obviously, better ROI for advertisers because it's faster, you have understanding of your data, the advertisers are happy. And your dependency on third parties and agency comes down, and you have a direct relationship with the advertisers for a change, which somehow have gotten lost in the past few years. And that's a good thing. So I think in all of this gloom, and I don't want to sound scary or anything, but essentially some of us are scared. There is also a silver lining that if you get things right, you can have a long-term sustainable business. Plan B of organic farming is always available to all of us if you can't figure it out. But anyway, happy to share more thoughts with you later. Ben? Thank you, guys.
Very informative. Thank you very much. So up next, we have Anita Nair. She's the CEO of Havas Media Group for India and South Asia. She's a veteran of the Indian media, being an integral part of its growth. As CEO, she took over the mandate to expand Havas Media Group in these lucrative markets. Under her leadership, Havas Media Group in India has grown exponentially, and it has expanded its offerings as an integrated communications group for traditional, digital, mobile, performance marketing, out-of-home, and sports. She was voted the second most influential person in India by the Brand Equity Survey in 2006, and has always been in the top list of the most influential media personalities ever since. So Anita, welcome, and thank you for sharing.
I'll have to connect. Just give me a second. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. The disadvantage of coming in last in presentations lined up is that your slides are taken. Yeah, and in a topic like this, the sources are sources like PageFair, etc. So they look similar as well. But the advantage is that I'll not hold you away too long from lunch. And the advantage is that I can zip through my presentation. So I'm going to exactly do that. I'm not going to repeat the slides which Ben and Swapnil have shared. But maybe in my presentation, the perspective might be a little different because we've heard publishers and we've heard the gloom and the worry, not really taking you guys away from organic marketing, organic stuff. But the fact is that we at agencies probably look both at audiences and publishers, and we look at it in a slightly different way. So, to be or not to be, I'm not neither in favor of ad blocking, nor am I against ad blocking. So, while there are people who are worried about ad blocking, there are publishers for sure, and there are audiences who care a shit, yeah, because as long as you are blocking, you're getting advertising and being very, very intrusive to my life, I couldn't care a shit. I will put those ad blockers in. So it's a different way of looking at things, really. Yeah. So I'm not going to take you through what is an ad blocker. Ben has taken that. Also, how does your stuff look with or without? See how many slides, Ben, you guys have taken away from me. Okay, but. So is ad blocking really a threat, you know? And this is something which Swapnil has also covered, you know, in his slides, but just want to spend a couple of minutes here. Yes, it used to be possibly a potential threat some time back, but today really it's a reality. You know, it threatens ad tech and publishing ecosystems, and ad blockers have commercial incentives. So if I'm blocking an ad, I'm commercially incentivized for that. So there is a difference there. You've seen this slide, so I'm not repeating it, yeah, because the source is the same, PageFair. So it's talking about the exponential growth of ad blockers globally, you know, while these numbers are not available for India, but I think these global numbers is something in the range of, I think, 198 million, users till June 2014, 2015. So Jan 2015 data said 181, it's 198 million users there. Also, if you look at India really, it's following the global trends, but not at such high growth rates for ad blocking. The gaming websites are really who are possibly using the ad blocking situation. 55% of the ads are blocked on the gaming ad sites. So, and I guess there's no rocket science there, right? I mean, if you're playing a game and if these ads keep intruding in and out, the whole sense of you crossing various levels and collecting all your coins and stuff actually goes for a toss. Yeah, so obviously it's nothing, no rocket science here as well. But what is interesting, and somebody whom possibly we've missed out a little bit, Ben did touch upon this, is this. So who does not want to view ads, really? And the data is the same from, Page Fair. But it's actually the millennials. I mean, they are a completely different animal today. We as advertisers, as marketers, are trying our level best, to understand the audiences. Because whether you're blocking ads or you're unblocking ads, what are you doing it for? Everybody is getting into those audiences right there. And if you're not understanding as publishers our audiences, then there is a problem there. So it's the millennials who are completely different animals today. Yeah, they don't care a damn. If something helps me, I will go with it. Otherwise, I'm not interested. So interestingly, if you look at the percentages, millennials are the one which block the ads maximum, of which 54% men and 31% women are interested in blocking ads. Men block more than women, yeah, so maybe men are more into gaming as compared to women. So again, very, very obvious there. And 30 years plus are actually not interested, they don't care. I mean, ads are coming, it's fine. If I have the option of skipping ads, it's great. If the ads are not coming, let me just see what I'm seeing really. So the important point here is that what do the millennials think? And that's, India is a young country, yeah? So there are these audiences out there who are saying, regardless of what your matrix says, we are not paying attention to it. If you don't add value to people's life, I don't really care about your advertising. So it's as simple as that, which is, I will use what I'm interested in. And why do people block in the first place? Again, something that's been shared, but it's because they find them very invasive. You are on the net for something, and suddenly these ads are popping up in various forms, and it is invasive, as far as I'm concerned. The primary motivation for blocking ads was that they interrupt what people are doing. So it is creating a problem. It is disrupting me in some way and not letting me do what I'm supposed to do. Digital ads are perceived to be irrelevant to the individual, and consumers are also concerned about data privacy. So not as much in India at this point in time, but I think we're reaching there. There is a problem. There have been a couple of technologies which have come into a country which have actually, by default, been able to use the data of consumers, and now suddenly consumers are getting affected by it and are questioning the privacy of the usage of data. There are more reasons. I mean, there have been some research done by Abode and Page Fair, which surveyed about 400 respondents and asking them if they would be interested in either blocking or not blocking. So the findings were that misuse of personal information was the primary reason to enable ad blocking. So you're using my information, personal information, for something else. Increase in number of ads, more important among millennials again, because like I just mentioned in my previous slides, and 1 in 4 respondents aged 35 to 49 did not have any desire to even use ad blocking software. So, which again from the previous slides is very, very clear that 30 plus really don't care as much. And there are some data on saying, but I can view some, even if they are invasive, even if they are disrupting or interrupting my way of things, but there are certain formats that I don't mind possibly viewing. So sorry for the small fonts, but pop-ups, for example, 18% don't mind, vis-a-vis text ads, which is at about 67%. So there are still people who are saying that I actually don't mind the advertising as much, and it depends really on what the format of advertising is and how interesting it is. So just to look from the platform's perspective, right, which again Swapnil had touched upon. So globally, 41% year-on-year growth of ad blockers. Ad blocking use on Chrome has increased by 51%, right? So that is largely the historic growth is driven by Google Chrome on the desktop, not on mobile. That's how it is looking. So it's reaching about, Chrome itself is reaching about 126 million average monthly active users to that extent. And if you look at mobile, well, similar, it's driven by Google Chrome and very, very similar, numbers, but obviously the overall numbers are less, the base is less. And future growth is also something which is driven by mobile. So today, as you know, iOS content blocking, Apple is actually giving that to you. So there is a history and a story and a logic behind that. However, mobile, again, as Swapnil also mentioned, that ad blocking on mobile is still very low. So that's one area which is, a potential opportunity area for the audiences. Also for customers, 50% of data usage savings. Again, it was mentioned that the loading is faster and the data consumption is lower. And India being a very, very value-conscious market, for them, if you're getting 4x fast speed, by blocking ads, and you don't need to pay for that data because when you're loading, your data is being consumed. Not too much good news for telcos, but I guess that's something interesting because there is a value proposition there. Looking at publishers versus ad blockers, really. So we looked at the overall situation. We looked at the audiences, which are very, very important. We looked at devices, and now or screens, and having a look at publisher versus ad blocker. How does it stack really? So global publishers plan to tackle ad blocking. How do they do that? So some pointers here to say that they are cutting deals with ad blocking companies. They're finding new ways to tackle the menace, investing in more appealing ad formats that consumers might better accept. Washington Post is a case in point where they've blocked their readers. So if you want to read Washington Post, then you have to subscribe. So they've actually blocked. Very, very interesting, because that probably gives them the true test of who's really interested and who's the real reader for them. And also, the Interactive Advertising Bureau is tackling this ad blocking issue with a global rollout of a plan which they think should work in the industry. Again, how Indian publishers plan to tackle ad blocking? India is still evolving, as we've mentioned. So we are not really as much bothered today about ad blocking, but we're nearing it, So the problem isn't really that rampant here. And currently the ad blocking penetration in India is at 2%, which again the number shared earlier is 4 million. Apple has its own motives to support ad blocking so that it can hit Google's revenue platform. So this is where the fight is. And as a publisher, options are very limited. Interesting challenge, and therefore also if there is a challenge, there's always an opportunity there. So having seen how global is tackling it, because obviously it is far more pronounced there vis-a-vis how India is looking at it, let us just understand the perspective of the biggest publisher, which is Google. It just doesn't take anybody away from that. Yeah, look at the revenue from ads for Google, whooping 67 billion US, right? So this is 2015 data. So now if you block ads, what happens to Google, right? So it really pains where it hurts most. So if you look at Android and iOS market shares, very, very similar Indian trends and global trends, where Android is almost mirroring 80%, and iOS is about 15%, similar for global. And don't forget, Android is owned by Google. Yeah, so there is a lot at stake there. Globally, again, it was mentioned that 22 billion ad revenues blocked as of June 2015, which is 14% of the global ad spends. And it's got to be doubling in 2016. As far as India is concerned, I think it's about 6%, which is blocked as of June 2015. 2 million people are using ad blockers, which is doubled to 4 million in 1 year. So 2014 to 2015, June, the numbers for ad blockers have doubled from 2 million to 4 million, in spite of the fact that there's just 2% of internet population out there. Yeah, so to my mind, in India at this point in time, unlikely that the ad blocking phenomena will attain critical mass anytime soon. So the publishers don't really need to, go for organic farming very much soon. Yeah, that's the way we're looking at it, because it will take some time to reach there. There are 2 videos which I'm skipping in the interest of time because they are only talking about what all of us are speaking. So I'll just. Sorry. So thoughts and solutions on that.
Thoughts.
Again, initiatives like paid